Dad chooses Hawaii with his favorite daughter instead of leading me down the aisle. But he changes his mind one day before the wedding since I did this. So, 26F am getting married this week, with just 5 days to go, and I'm already caught up in so much drama, all thanks to my sister and my dad. For context, my dad has been a single father for the past 10 years since my mother passed away after a long battle with cancer when I was 16. It was incredibly difficult for us, but more so for me, because that's when I realized that nobody was truly in my corner anymore. My sister, Katie, would now have free reign to lord over me. My mother had always treated us both equally, but my dad definitely had a soft spot for my sister. After my mom passed away, Katie could get away with everything, but it wasn't that easy for me. Katie, who is 2 years older than me, is easily 10 times more annoying and entitled than anyone I know. She would literally treat me like her personal servant when we were younger, and every time I protested, my dad would ask me to do what she wanted because, apparently, she was too fragile to do things for herself. That was just an act. I knew it, but my dad believed her. It didn't hurt that she had been a sickly child growing up, but as she matured, she grew out of it. Still, she liked to pretend that she was always recovering from colds or other minor illnesses just to avoid doing her chores. So I ended up doing all the work around the house while she lazed around in her room. It was incredibly annoying, but if I didn't do it, nobody else would, because my dad was always too tired after coming home from work. I didn't want to bother him, so I just took care of things. After I turned 18 and moved out for college, things got better for me, because I didn't have to live with her anymore. We didn't have much contact after college, since I didn't like her, and we never really got along. She wasn't just lazy, she wasn't a nice person to be around. Katie would constantly take pot shots at me, try to rile me up, and be generally annoying, so I was pretty glad to be out of the house. I missed my dad for sure, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my sanity to live with my family. I know a lot of people might find it weird that I actually got along with my dad, despite his blatant favoritism toward Katie, but we had a nice relationship until recently. It wasn't like I was a doormat for him. I always protested and stood up for myself when he was being too much, and we had our fair share of fights over the years about his bias toward Katie, but at the end of the day, he was still my father, and we would eventually make up. I met my fiancé Andy in college, and after dating for almost 8 years, we finally decided to get married this year. We're in good places in our respective careers, and it just felt like the right time. I can't say the same for my sister though. Katie has been doing pretty badly lately and has moved back in with my dad. After she graduated, she lived by herself for a couple of years, but last year she quit her job to join a friend in a jewelry business. Unfortunately, it didn't exactly go well. They had done absolutely no research, weren't adequately prepared, and just jumped into it without thinking much. Naturally, it was doomed from the beginning. Not only did they burn through all the investment money that they had mostly raised from family and friends, but they were also not able to get any substantial amount out of the business. Katie had already quit her job, and after the business flopped, she had to shut it down. Since then, she has been unemployed. It's been 6 months, and she hasn't even bothered to start looking for another job, so she's completely relying on my dad. He was planning on retiring in a couple of years, but now I don't think that's feasible anymore, as he's supporting her. This is just one of the things we've recently thought about, because I think he needs to tell her to get up and find a job. She can't just rely on her aging dad for the rest of her life and mope around because of one failed business venture. She needs to get out there and do something with her life, but my dad says she just needs some time to get over things and deal with this emotionally before committing to anything else. We have very opposing views on this topic, so we try not to talk about it, as it will only lead to a fight. Besides, I got engaged just a couple of weeks after she had to shut down her business, and my dad thinks that's another reason she's so upset. Even her younger sister is doing so well in life while she can't even bring herself to get out of bed most days. I know for a fact that she's jealous of me right now, because she makes sure to put it out on social media, pretending that everything awful in the world is happening to her just for attention. Every time someone responds to her posts, which definitely seem like a cry for help, she brings up how I'm doing so great and how she deserves all the success, not me. Apparently, I got it because I'm willing to manipulate and step on people to get ahead. I obviously don't do that. I am where I am because of my hard work and efforts, and she is where she is because she likes to play the victim, even though she's responsible for most of the bad things happening to her. Well, except for one. About 3 weeks ago, her cat passed away after almost 15 years. She had that cat for a really long time, and she was extremely attached to it. Naturally, when that happened, she was racked with grief, and my dad told me things were so bad that I actually started feeling bad for her. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to reach out and give her my condolences, but I didn't want to seem fake, so I just told my dad to convey my message. She had already been pretty depressed, and when her cat passed away she refused to eat for days. My dad had to literally beg her to get out of bed and try to survive. It was really pathetic, and I felt bad for both of them, but I was busy with wedding preparations since there were just a couple of weeks to go until the big day. So I decided not to involve myself too much in what was going on. I kept in touch with my dad and comforted him whenever he was upset about Katie's behavior, but that was all I could do. I didn't think this would lead to any trouble for me. But a few days ago, my dad contacted me to tell me that he wouldn't be able to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day. I had obviously assumed that he would be the one to do that, but when I called him to formally ask the day before, he told me he needed time to think about it, which was suspicious. The next day, he called to decline, and when I asked why, since I was obviously perplexed, his reason blew my mind. He told me that Katie had cremated her cat a few weeks ago and now wanted to go to Hawaii to scatter his ashes on the beach. A couple of years back, she and a bunch of her friends had gone on a road trip to Hawaii, and she had taken her cat with her. Apparently, she had many good memories of that place, and it was special to her. The day of my wedding was exactly 1 month after her cat had passed away, so she wanted to scatter the ashes on my wedding day. Not only did my dad decline to walk me down the aisle, but he also told me he wouldn't be able to attend my wedding at all. He said he was really sorry and wanted to make it up to me later, but he had to go with Katie, since this was the first time in weeks she had expressed wanting to do something or leave the house. She specifically requested that my dad accompany her because she wanted someone to be there for emotional support. I was extremely pissed off when he told me this, but I tried to stay calm. I suggested maybe a friend could go with her, or she could do it at least a day after my wedding so that he could attend. I wanted at least one parent to be present, but my dad said she was firm about her plans, and that he had made the same suggestions himself, because he also wanted to attend my wedding. However, when he proposed alternatives, Katie got really upset and accused him of not caring about her feelings. According to her, on my wedding day, I would have loads of people around me who cared about me, but she only had my father. She believed she should be the priority because she was going through a really difficult phase in her life. When my dad said that, he agreed with her and that she should be the priority given her situation, I completely lost it. I told him that Katie had always been his priority, so I wasn't surprised that he was ditching me on my wedding day just to be with her. I didn't give him a chance to say anything else and hung up, blocking him everywhere. I was really upset, and when I told Andy about it, he understood where I was coming from. I cried for 2 days, but then I decided to get back at my father and do something I knew would piss him off. Since I knew my sister was playing mind games with me, I figured the thing to do was to play a little game of my own. Instead of wallowing in sadness, I decided to ask my uncle to walk me down the aisle. My uncle is my dad's twin brother, and they absolutely loathe each other. I've known that since I was a kid and have witnessed firsthand how nasty they can get when they're around each other. Whenever they met at family events, they would constantly try to one-up each other, making things awkward for everyone else. My grandparents tried hard to get them to stop, but they just hated each other too much. Eventually, they grew distant, and after my mom passed away, my dad stopped attending any event where he knew my uncle would be present. Personally, I didn't have anything against my uncle. I could sympathize with him because I knew what it was like to have a sibling you hated, but we weren't particularly close either. Still, after that conversation with my dad, I was so pissed off that I went out of my way to contact my uncle and ask him to walk me down the aisle. He was surprised when I asked and said he didn't know what to say because we weren't close enough for that. But when I told him this was to make my dad upset, he didn't need any more convincing. He was on board as soon as he realized it would piss my dad off. My uncle actually started laughing when I asked if he wanted to be part of it. Even though they're both in their 50s, he told me he would never pass up an opportunity to embarrass his brother. Amen to that. We agreed to make a post about it, which would definitely get back to my father. That evening, I posted about how grateful I was my uncle had agreed to walk me down the aisle. Within hours, I received a phone call from my father. I had unblocked him for this purpose, and as soon as he reached out, he told me he was very upset that I would even consider talking to my uncle, let alone replace him with that man of all people. He told me that he would convince Katie to delay the scattering of the ashes, but now all I had to do was agree to let him walk me down the aisle. He said it would be very embarrassing and insulting for him to have my uncle walk me when he was still well and alive. I told him that he had his chance, but he blew it by choosing Katie over me, and now I was giving him a taste of his own medicine. He got really upset and said that I was being petty and immature, and I agreed. I told him my asterisk was being petty and immature, which only upset him more. By the end of the phone call, he was in tears. saying that he never expected me to act like this just because he was trying to be there for my depressed sister, who had it a lot harder than I did. He said I had no empathy and was being pure evil because my sister had lost everything, and I couldn't even let her have our dad for one day. Now, I feel like what I did might have been insensitive because he was right about my sister having lost everything. So I need you guys to tell me if I need to apologize to my dad or not. Am I the asshole for asking my uncle to walk me down the aisle after my dad declined because my sister wanted him to accompany her to Hawaii on my wedding day? Update 1. 2 days to go until the wedding, and you know, I'm just going to walk down the aisle by myself. Instead of putting myself through all this hassle, I think it's more appropriate for me to walk the aisle on my own since, in the long run, I've realized I'll be on my own. I spoke to my uncle, and since we already got the reaction we wanted from my dad, he said he was fine with it. He'll just be a guest now, as he was supposed to be initially. He didn't mind at all, especially since he had been skeptical about walking me down the aisle in the first place. I also spoke to my father, but not on a phone, because that would lead to another confrontational conversation. I left him a message, saying that if he wanted to attend the wedding, he was free to do so, but he didn't need to walk me down the aisle. I also told him that if he wanted to go to Hawaii with Katie instead, he was free to do that as well. However, if he made that choice, I would have to cut him out of my life for good. He has had enough chances to prove that he can treat me as a priority when it really matters, but he has failed every time. I refuse to tolerate this kind of disrespect anymore. I want to get married and be happy on my wedding day. I've spent too much time worrying about what he thinks and how other people will feel about my decisions, and it has been a waste of my time. If my dad had cared about my feelings, he never would have dropped that bomb on me just days before my wedding. If he cared, he would have apologized after I sent him that message, but he hasn't even bothered to reply. I talked to Andy about all this, and he thinks it's the right call since the wedding is just a few days away, and we still haven't been able to sort things out with my dad. At this point, I don't think I have any other option. Update 2. Hey, so first things first, I got married yesterday. I still can't believe it. I'm actually married now, and along with the engagement ring on my finger, I also have a wedding band. It's surreal, and I'm so happy right now. I hate to have to think about my dad and my sister, but I owe you guys an update, especially since I kind of ranted and left in the last one. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, my father did not attend the. He chose to go to Hawaii with my sister to scatter her cat's ashes instead, which, apparently, is a normal thing to choose over your other daughter's wedding. I don't even want to get into that. Some people have criticized me for not taking my sister's depression seriously. Look, I feel bad for her, and I stand by the fact that depression is a terrible thing. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, which ironically happens to be Katie, but I don't believe her actions were driven by depression. It was her crippling need to be the center of attention that made her to scatter her cat's ashes in Hawaii on the day of my wedding. She could have waited a couple of days or even done it earlier, but she just had to do it on my wedding day. I refuse to believe that this is just her being depressed and acting out of it. Either way, depression is an explanation, but it's not an excuse. So yeah, I'm not making fun of her, but I also refuse to let her off easy just because she's struggling. And coming to my dad, that's just another story altogether. I don't even know what to say about him, except that he has let me down for the last time, and this time I'm not going to forgive him. It's going to be difficult going through life without any parents in my corner, but let's be real, he has never been in my corner anyway. For him, life has always been about Katie, and I can see that crystal clear now. I was a fool to believe that things could ever change. He chose not to attend my wedding, and he was very clever about it. He didn't let me know until after the ceremony. Until then, I was still confused to whether he would attend or not, since I had left him a message earlier, but he didn't reply. I kept checking my phone, but after I had walked down the aisle and everything was done, I realized he wouldn't be showing up. It was then that he chose to text me, saying that he was in Hawaii with Katie and had decided to attend the scattering of the ashes because Katie needed him more than I did. She was more emotionally dependent on him, and he said he was sorry, but he hoped I would understand. I might have found meaningful if he hadn't. Also said that my petty and immature behavior with my uncle had put him off, and he thought it was best for us to stay apart for a while. That was another reason he wasn't attending. I'm not going to deny that it was petty, but honestly, the only reason I did that was because I had always felt ignored after my mom passed away. I'm not going to pretend that what I did wasn't immature, but what else could I have done? I just wanted to do something to piss him off, to see if he actually cared. Maybe he did, but clearly, it wasn't enough to show up for me. That message really annoyed me, especially on the day of my wedding when I just wanted to be happy. So I blocked him and moved on with my day. He had already chosen not to come to the wedding, so sending that message just to tell me he wasn't attending was pretty redundant. People at the wedding did ask why my father and sister weren't there. I chose to be completely honest and told them the real reason. I figured it reflected poorly on them, not me. So I had no reason to hide anything. Most people were speechless, and others found it quite hilarious, but in a sad way. Now the entire family knows my dad skipped my wedding to go to Hawaii with Katie to scatter her cat's ashes. He couldn't even spare one single day for me, and that is his biggest failure as a father, I think, but I still had a great time, and nothing can change that. My wedding day will always be the best day of my life so far. I get to spend the rest of my life with the man I love the most, and I've decided he will be my only family from now on. Update 3. Hey. So it's been a week since my wedding. It still feels great to say that. Anyway, Andy and I are supposed to go on our honeymoon in a couple of days, but of course, my dad and Katie just can't stand to see me happy. They decided this was the perfect time to confront me about what I had told people at the wedding, about why they weren't there. 3 days ago, Katie texted me. I hadn't blocked her. I had just blocked my father, but after reading her text, I felt like blocking her as well because it was just annoying that she felt entitled to confront me. But after reading her text, I felt like blocking her as well because it was just so annoying that she felt like she had the moral high ground here. Just for the record, the only reason I haven't blocked her yet is because, in case something happens to my father, I want to be able to know about it. Despite our differences, I'm sure that she would still inform me in case of an accident, illness, or whatever. Anyway, that's literally the only reason why I've still. To me, I know that most people would advise me to go no contact, but I don't think it's possible for me. Just because my dad has been a terrible father to me doesn't necessarily mean I have to be a terrible daughter to him. This might not make sense to a lot of people, but these are my morals, and I'm going to stick to them. So I would appreciate it if people didn't comment on this. Now, coming to the message she sent me, she said, "Hey, we just came back from Hawaii, and we have already been contacted by many of our relatives. They think that we were wrong for choosing the day of your wedding to scatter my cat's ashes. I'm not surprised that you chose to tell everybody this story and portray us in a negative way, but I'm just disappointed that you're still picking on me, even though you know I'm going through a very difficult time in my life. I really wish that you hadn't talked crap about me and Dad because we are family, and you of all people should understand that it's very difficult to lose a loved one. I really hope that you would have had more compassion for me, but anyway, that is obviously not the case. Dad has also noticed that you have blocked him, and he's very upset about that, so I think you should undo that. Honestly, all I have to say is that you need to be a little more thoughtful towards us. You can't just go through life thinking about nobody apart from yourself and expect people to be okay with that. I hope you understand what I'm getting at and apologize. Even if you don't, I'm not going to be surprised, because if you're still choosing to hate on me at time, there's very little that I can expect from you. The tone of the message itself pissed me off really badly, and the content, well, I don't even want to say anything about it because I might end up cursing her out. It was so pretentious and holier than thou that I honestly wanted to block her, but after thinking about it for a while, I decided to craft my own reply and send it back to her. Hey Katie, I did tell our relatives why you and Dad weren't present at the wedding, and I decided to be honest about it because I'm not a liar. By deciding not to show up for my wedding, you pretty much put yourself in that position, and I think it's very unfair to expect me to cover up for you people, especially given the current circumstances, since both of you have been nothing but unkind to me. You guys couldn't even think about me on my wedding day and try to put me first just for one day, so I really don't think I have anything to apologize for. If Dad is upset about the fact that I blocked him, he probably should have thought things through earlier instead of regretting it now. I've already made up my mind, and I don't want any contact with either of you. So I would really appreciate it if you didn't contact me after this. Unless it's an emergency, then you can text or call me. But unless there's any urgent situation, I really wish that you wouldn't contact me at all, since I have no interest in speaking to either you or Dad. Both of you have hurt me a lot in the past few years, and I agree with what Dad said. It would be for the best if we spent some time apart for now. I'm a married woman now, and I want to spend the next couple of years trying to enjoy my life with my husband. Right now, he is the only family that I have. I wish you both all the very best in your life. Goodbye. After showing it to Andy, I sent the message, and she just replied a couple of minutes ago. She said she would respect my wishes, and added that my dad is still very upset about my decision not to speak to them, but I can't help that. They brought this onto themselves. I know Katie is happy that she won't have to speak to me, and if my dad really is that upset, well, too bad. Like I said, this is his own fault. Anyway, I'm just going to try and enjoy my honeymoon now. We've been planning this for a really long time, and I deserve to have some fun now.